Hey everyone, it's Alexi Uzas here from Exile Accelerator. In this video, I'm going to explain to you the one decision that you can make as a filmmaker today that will reap exponential results for you. Now, before I get started, I want to let you know that spots are available for our Producing Accelerator program that helps filmmakers consistently finance, produce, and distribute their own films so that they can start to build a career as a filmmaker. So if that's something that you're interested in, stick around until the end of this video and I'll give you some more information about that program, how it works, and how you can get in touch with us. As always, if you like this content, subscribe to this channel and hit the bell to be notified when we post a video. The one decision that you can make today that will reap exponential results for you as a filmmaker is to focus on one project and axe all the other projects that you're working on right now. Now that might seem a bit too obvious for you, or it might seem like it's not enough of some grand idea, but I can assure you, if you make this one decision today, it will guarantee that you have the best chance of making a film, making a great film, and being able to start developing and building a career as a filmmaker. And I really can't stress how important this decision is for you to make. And I'm going to explain to you in this video why it is so important. The first thing to have a chat about though is to first identify, if you're a filmmaker and you're watching this video, are there projects that you're working on right now that you don't have 100% conviction in? So whether it's your own project, whether it's a project that you're working on with someone else, I want you to just stop for a second and have a think about, what are those projects that you're working on, regardless of what stage they're at. They could be idea, they could be in development, they could be at final draft, you could be trying to raise finance. If there are multiple projects that you're working on, the best thing that you could do right now is to write down all those projects. Stop the video, write those projects down, and then we're going to go through this video and I'm going to explain to you not only why it's so important for you to focus on only one project, but how you can actually make the decision about which project to focus on. So the first thing that I want to discuss with you is basically how this one decision can take care of so many other decisions for you down the track. So if you make the decision today to focus on only one key project, then there are so many decisions that you no longer have to worry about. All these other projects that you might get pitched or you might be working on, they're going to require you to make decisions. But if you make the decision today to only focus on one project and say no to everything else, then you will never have to make those decisions. And what that does for you is it frees up your mental energy, right? So there is such a thing as decision fatigue. If you have too many decisions to make as a human, you can experience decision fatigue. And when you're experiencing decision fatigue, your mental performance drops. And so if you basically just take away those decisions, if you eliminate all those future potential decisions, then you're not going to have to make those decisions and you're going to free up as much mental energy as possible to focus on making that one key project the absolute best that it can be. And this theory of decision fatigue, it's not something new, it's not something I invented. Probably the most famous example of this is Steve Jobs, who wore the same outfit every single day to work. And the reason that he did that was to take any decision making out of the equation when it came to what he was going to wear to work. Why did he do that? He did that so he had to make less decisions during the day, so that when it came to making really important decisions, he had as much mental space and mental energy available to him. So I'm not saying to go and start wearing the same thing every single day or start trying to be or living like Steve Jobs. I'm not saying that at all. All I'm saying is that by making a decision today to focus on one project, you're going to free up as much mental energy and as possible, so that when you're making decisions about this one project, they're going to be the best decisions possible. The next thing I want to talk about, and it is tied to that in a way, is mental energy, or actually even energy in general. And this is something that I think is extremely important to kind of come to terms with or realize as a creative. And it's something that I have thought about for a long time. It's something I've tried to live by for a long time. But I actually just read a book that actually expressed it and illustrated it probably in the best way possible. So the book is called Essentialism. If you haven't read that book, I encourage you to do that. A lot of you may have already read that book, which is great. You'll understand this concept. And that's basically that as a human or as a filmmaker, your energy is finite. So if your energy is finite, then you only have a certain amount of energy to expend every day, week, month, or year. And so if your energy is finite and your energy is going in lots of different directions, then each of those directions that it's going in only gets a small amount of that energy. So if you think about your life, you likely have a job that's generating an income for you. That requires energy. You have your family, that requires energy. You have your friends, that requires energy. You have your health, right? Exercise and things like that. That requires energy. So there are already these things that are taking away your energy before you even get to your creative projects, to films. So if you've used all that, and if you're using all that energy and then you're working on, let's say, 5 different films, then your energy is now going not only on those absolute necessities, but all these other projects. And so the amount of energy that you have for those projects is extremely limited. If you took away 4 of those projects and left just one project, then you're allowing more of that finite energy to be spread along those paths. Now, if we take the same example of finite energy and we just look at your creative projects, so the amount of time that you actually have to work on creative projects, if you're again spreading that across, say, 5 projects, then each of those projects is only getting 1/5 of the finite energy. But if you choose to focus on one project, then that one project is getting all the energy that you have to put towards creative projects. And it goes without saying that if it has more energy, then you have more potential for that one thing to be better than 5 things that are only getting 1/5 of that energy. So this is another reason why it's extremely important to focus on just one project at a time. And the stage that I'm at now as a producer, I'm going into my 6th year now of doing this. And it's only now that I'm working on multiple projects. But, and this is a big but, I'm only working on multiple projects because there are other producers involved in those projects. There is no way that I would be producing all of those projects just myself. So if you're a filmmaker, if you're a director, if you're just a producer starting out, then it's extremely difficult for you to be working on multiple projects. I can only do that now because I can hire people and employ people that can help me execute those things. And really took me the better part of 5 years to get to a stage where I could do that. So my first 4 feature films that I made, I was only working on those projects. And even now where I have multiple projects that the company is producing, I'm only lead producing one of those projects. right? So even now, I'm putting all of my energy into one project, and I'm leveraging, either partnerships that I have, or I'm utilizing the help that I have from employees to help execute the other projects. So the next thing that flows on from that is time. And this is pretty much the same equation as energy, because time is also finite. There are only so many hours in a day, in a week, in a month, in a year, right? So if you're working a full-time job, and I was working a full-time job when I made my first feature film, and you're trying to get a feature film off the ground, it's likely that you probably only have, like, let's say you're working weekends and some night times, you might have anywhere between 8 to 20 hours, let's say, a week to spend on that project. If you're then splitting that time up, and let's just say 8 hours, if you're splitting that up between 4 projects, then each of those projects is only getting 2 hours a week. And I can tell you from experience that that is not enough time to finance and produce a feature film. If you're working on only one project, then you have 8 hours a week to finance and produce a feature film. And I can tell you from experience that that is enough time to get a project into production if you're working on it consistently. So when I made my first feature film, I was working full time, as I just mentioned, so that I could save up the money that was needed to self-finance that project. And so I was working on that film on weekends, night times, during my lunch break. And I just know that if I was trying to make 2 films at that time, it never would have happened. So time and energy are 2 real finite constraints that you have on you that you're going to need to find a way to best manage. And the best way to manage it is to focus on only one project at a time. Another reason to focus on only one project is because if you want to be a filmmaker, you need to be making films, right? So there's no point just pumping out screenplays, right? If you're just writing screenplays, if you've got honestly, if you've got more than 2 or 3 screenplays on your shelf, you've spent way too much time screenwriting. Because, like I said, if you want to be a filmmaker, you have to be making films. So the more time that you spend screenwriting, the less time you're spending financing, and the less time you're spending trying to get a film into production. So again, by focusing on only one project, then you take away all this other time that you might just keep spending on screenwriting or development. And it cuts down your development time massively. It cuts down your screenwriting time massively, and it allows you to then move into the next stage of the production process, which is the most critical, and that's the financing stage. Because if you don't get through that financing stage, your film doesn't go into production. So this is another reason why it's great to focus on one project at a time, because it means that you're not spending all this time screenwriting. And you might be asking, well, how do you actually choose the best project to go ahead with? And I will come back to that at the end of the video. Another reason to focus on one key project is that if you're a filmmaker that has a slate of films, right? You always hear about filmmakers that have a slate of films in development. If I hear that someone has a slate of films in development, it's usually a red flag for me, and it means that they just don't know how to make films. Because if you have, 10 films in development, well, why aren't you making any films? And if you're making the films, then there's no way that you have the time to have 10 films in development, because financing a film, producing a film, post-production, that requires a lot of time and a lot of energy. So if you have, I can tell you now as well, just from my own experience, right now, I don't have any films in development. I have 3 films in pre-production. I have 1 film in post-production. I have 0 films in development. Now, that doesn't mean that I haven't read screenplays. It's not to say that I'm not starting to formulate ideas about what's next, but I haven't made the decision about what film is next, and I haven't started throwing my time and energy into that development phase because that decision hasn't been made yet. So I do not spend time just developing projects, because if you're doing that, then you're not spending the time financing and you're not spending the time producing. So again, this is a real red flag for me as a filmmaker. If you speak to someone that has all these films in development, and I'm sure you already have, there are producers out there, production companies, even writer directors that just have all these films in development, it's usually a red flag that they don't know what to do next. If that is you, then I encourage you to take the advice from this video and really look at that development slate. And like I said, just hone in on one key project, start putting all your time and energy towards that project. So those are just some of the reasons why I think it's very important for you to focus on one key project. Another reason is that if you want to go from creating something good to creating something great, then again, it does require all your time, all your energy, and all your focus. And I truly believe that the best way to get to the next stage of your filmmaking career is to make a great film. And when I say great film, it's not that you think it's a great film, it's that the public thinks that it's a great film. So what I mean by that is that, it gets into a major festival. It gets a wide release. It gets, it doesn't need to have 100% critical acclaim, but it has some level of critical acclaim and it's actually reviewed by critics. If your film does none of these things, it's extremely hard for you to get to the next stage of your filmmaking career. And I'll add to that as well, commercial success, because that's also important when you go to your next film. For those things to happen, for your film to get into a major festival, for it to get distribution and a wide release, for it to get critical acclaim, for it to do well commercially, it has to be a great film. And the best way to make your film great is to spend as much time as you can on that one project. And this really is the key to getting to the next stage of your filmmaking career. So I'm not saying don't spend any time on development. I'm not saying don't spend any time on screenwriting. Those are absolutely crucial parts of the production process, because that's a blueprint for your future success. But I'm absolutely adamant on you only spending the time on one project and making that the best that it can be, so that then when the film gets financed and goes into production and you spend a year to 2 years of your life, that film has the best chance of succeeding on all those levels that I just spoke about. And by it succeeding, you can then get to the next stage of your career, which is hopefully to work on, a larger budget, or to work with that next level of cast that you're hoping to work with. And so going from good to great is an extremely important part of filmmaking and building a career. And it is a very important reason why you should focus on one project. There's a great book that is actually called Good to Great. And it is a business book, so it's not related to film, so I don't want to go into it in too much detail. But it basically tracks some of the best publicly listed companies over the last 50 years in the States. And it shows how by focusing on only one part of their business, like one offering, one concept, and it's called the hedgehog concept. That's what the author refers to it as. But it shows how by these companies focusing on just that one concept, that one thing that could make them great, and how by then spending the time consistently day in, day out, working on that one key concept, they were able to turn their companies from good companies into great companies. And these companies outperformed, the market by huge multipliers. So when I'm talking about getting exponential results, this is the reason. Because if you do all these things that I've spoken about, you really can get exponential results as a filmmaker. So those are the reasons that I do think you should focus on one key project. And now I want to speak briefly about how to decide which project to work on, and also how, what you should do today to really make this decision and start taking action today. So some of the key factors that I believe that you should look at when deciding on which project to work on is how passionate are you about the project, right? This is something that's extremely important because filmmaking is difficult. Getting a project up is extremely hard. So you need to be passionate about the project. You need to believe in its core message. If you don't have those things, then as soon as you start hitting these really difficult obstacles, and I can tell you now, it gets really tough and you doubt yourself and you lose confidence over projects. But if you believe in that project, then it allows you to push through that difficulty. So that's number one. Number two is the team. So who's already involved in that project? Do you have absolute faith in the members of the team? And do you know that they're willing to go to the lengths and extent that you're willing to go to make that project happen? So that's number two. Number three is how achievable is this project? And what I mean by achievable is, can the project be financed? Because if the project can't be financed, then that's a real issue, because you don't want to spend all this time all this energy on this one project that then ultimately goes nowhere. So you need to have some level of certainty and confidence that the film can actually get financed. If you're wondering how the hell do I do that, I encourage you to set up a time to have a chat with me. There's a link in the description. I'm going to come back to this later in the video as well. But this is one of the first things that you should be doing when you're developing a project. It's analyzing how achievable that project is to actually get financed, so that you don't spend all this time working on a project that goes nowhere. So that's number three. Make sure that that it's an achievable project. And really, those are the main things that you need to look at. Script. Are you passionate about the project? Number two, who's the team? Do you have conviction and do you have faith that they'll be there to the end? And three, how achievable is the project? If you can tick those three things off, then you should go ahead with that film. Now, if there are multiple projects that you have that fit the bill, then simply decide which project ranks highest on each of those criteria and choose that project. And if you still have a project or a couple of projects that are head to head, just choose the project that you want to make. At the end of the day, you need to have fun making a film. You need to enjoy the process. So simply choose the film that you're going to have the most fun making. So those are the ways to decide. Now, if you've written down your list and you apply that criteria, then you should have come up with a winner. And if you have that one winner, then what you need to do now is purge. You need to purge all the other projects that are on your slate that you're working on. And this is something that's difficult to do. It's going to require you to have lots of difficult conversations with yourself, with other people that you might be working with, that you might be engaged on other projects with. And it's definitely the hardest part of all this. The easy part is listening to me talk on a video. The hardest part is actually, making the decisions out and taking this action. But this is something that, if the message of this video resonated with you, then this is the next step for you to take. So you need to speak to those people that you're working with on other projects, and you simply need to exit from those projects. You can explain why you're doing so and why it's important for you to do so, but it's important that you do that now. Now, the only qualification that I'll make to this is if a project is already financed, then you should commit to that project, right? You shouldn't kind of bail out on a project that's already financed, that you've spent all this time working on. It's gone through development, it's gone through financing, only for you to pull the pin. So if it has been financed, you need to stay in that project and see it out. If it hasn't been financed, if there's no finance that's been raised on the project, then now is the time to get out of that project and focus on your one key project. And kind of leaving message or leaving thought that I want to leave you guys with is that if you don't make this decision, then you will become part of someone else's plan. I want you to think about that for a second. If you don't make the decision to focus on one project, you will become part of someone else's plan. Right? So please think about that for a second. All these other projects that you're working on, that you're getting pulled in different directions, they're not your plan. They're not what you set out to do. And so the more energy, time, effort you give those other projects, the more you're just becoming part of someone else's plan. And if you want to be a filmmaker, if you want to create work, then being part of someone else's plan isn't the way to do that. You need to have conviction in the projects that you believe in and that you're working on. Okay, so that's it for this video. If you like the video, hit the like button, subscribe to this channel so that you can get the best filmmaking advice. If you did like the video, I'd love to hear your comments in the section below, and let me know if there are any particular points that you'd like me to elaborate on further. Now, as I mentioned at the start of the video, I do want to let you know that spots are available for our accelerator program. That accelerator is a program that helps filmmakers like you finance, produce, and distribute your films so that you can start to build a career in the film industry. As you might have gathered from this video, it's not just about giving you the knowledge, the tools, the templates, the processes, the system. It's about also giving you a framework and some principles that you can use to basically help optimize what you're doing and give you the best chance of succeeding, not just with financing one film, but with financing multiple films and starting to build that career as a filmmaker. So if you're interested in learning more about that program, head to the link in the description. You will be able to watch a video that takes you through our producing system step by step. And you'll also be able to set up a call with either me or a member of my team. And we'll be working out where you're at with your project, where you're trying to get to, and if we can help. And as always, check out these videos next on how to up your filmmaking game.